Welcome to the Canary Cast, the official podcast of the Mr. Canary Company. I know that I joke that we here at Mr. Canary are not a typical bird feeding company, but after 7 episodes, even I have to concede that it's time we have an episode dedicated to talking about birds. Just kidding. This episode is called It's Not About the Birds. Please do me a favor before we begin. Comment, like, and subscribe so you can receive notifications when we drop new episodes. This helps new people discover the podcast and grows our reach. So, getting back to today's episode, it really is true. It's not about the birds. I'm sorry if I'm bursting anybody's ornithological bubble right now, but the overwhelming majority of people don't feed birds because they just love everything to do about birds. Hard nope. I know this is blasphemous talk, and all the big boys in our industry who sell product features and avian benefits like they're going out of style will disagree with me. But that's exactly why bird feeding has a reputation of being a boring thing for boring people. The people you'd expect to be marketing the crap out of America's favorite pastimes instead bore you into an early grave with their product specs, weight capacities, anti-squirrel bigotry, and their syndicated bird guidebooks. And truly, like all jokes aside, conservation and environmental stewardship really are legitimate and important. The little niche of biology we call ornithology is exciting, but only for a select few. These big bird feeding companies need to pretend to innovate if they want to stay on store shelves. So sure, I get why they list their incremental improvements on the tag with the same fervor you'd expect as if they'd invented the next iPhone. But those things are fine for them. But those things all put together are like 3% of the point behind the relaxing relationship ritual that is backyard bird feeding. Most of us who keep a bird feeder couldn't care less about mating behaviors, migration patterns, or what our favorite bird's Latin name is. In all honesty, the overwhelming majority of us who feed birds do so because we love humans. Those humans might be named Mom, Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, or maybe even weird Uncle Jim. The point is that there's real, super secret bird feeding insider data, which shows that fully 8 out of 10 people who start feeding birds do so because it's an activity connected to a human that they love. I think it's probably fair to assume that for most of you listening to this podcast, you probably have a bird feeder. I want you to think back to the first time you can remember crossing paths with a backyard bird feeder. Where was that? The natural follow-up that you're already thinking about is who that bird feeder belonged to. What were the little rituals that person built up around their bird feeding? Right now, you're probably reminiscing about warm summer days spent with that loved one in their backyard. Or maybe you have an image of a porch chair or a kitchen window that overlooks the backyard. Whatever your specific memory, your memory, if you'll pull at that string connected to it, it's really a memory of relaxing together with the person who kept up that bird feeder. Your memory is about talking together. It's about enjoying the breeze together. And yes, maybe occasionally that memory even includes pointing out a particular silly little bird perched over on the bird feeder across the yard. But the point is, you did that together. Do you see what I'm trying to point out? Statistically, it would be amazing if more than 3 people listening to this podcast right now can honestly say, no, I didn't know anybody who fed birds before me while I was growing up. Nope, no one did. Not a family member, not a neighbor, not a friend. Instead, I just woke up one day when I was 41 years old and decided it'd be fun to create a logbook of my backyard birds. So it doesn't happen that way, folks. People don't start feeding birds because they have people do start feeding birds because they have these quiet, nostalgic memories of a loved one who did it before them. As we live our lives, we inevitably revisit some of those quiet memories in the back of our brains, and those happy thoughts convince us to set up our own bird feeder, to create the same space, to experience new iterations of those memories for ourselves. This episode is not meant to dog bird lovers. God bless your sweet, kind, nerdy hearts and all the goodness that flows from them as a result. If you love the intricacies of the etymology that informs avian species scientific names, more power to you. If you devote your weekends and your yards to uprooting non-native plants to turn your yard into an ornithological oasis, that's pretty sweet. And if you're somebody who gets a rush from grabbing your binoculars and your guidebook to confirm that yet another species has made its first time appearance in your backyard, you are the salt of the earth. But are those the things that get passed down from generation to generation? I'd suggest that those things, the things adored by what we in the industry called avid birders, are really just optional incidentals. The real value behind bird feeding, the reason feeding birds is an inherited hobby, is because it's an activity that creates space. Space for birds and nature, sure, but really it creates a space for humans to gather, to bond together, and to quietly grow closer in love and appreciation for one another. That's why people end up with a bird feeder in their shopping cart when they had zero intention of buying one when they walked into the store. They found themselves craving the connection that they remember a bird feeder facilitating back in the day. I'm one of those people. My earliest memories of a bird feeder bring me back to my grandma, who we lovingly called Boo Boo. See, my Boo Boo was this petite Polish woman who fussed over her small yard in South Bend, Indiana. Her house wasn't in the best neighborhood, but Boo Boo was fearless. She labored for hours in her yard during the summertime, patiently tending flowers and plants mostly. But dead set in the center of her yard, she had a cement bird bath encircled beneath with annuals. Whenever my family visited Boo Boo in good weather, we'd always end up in her backyard, even though there wasn't enough seating. But we'd end up there anyway, and we'd talk. Much of the time, it was just chit-chat and catching up. Birds would come and use the bird bath often, and in later years, Boo Boo added bird feeders. These weren't really the focal point of our time together. They were just a natural place for our eyes to rest while we did the real work of communicating and connecting so that we could genuinely participate in each other's lives. All these years later, I don't remember the species. I remember her. I couldn't tell you how many mating pairs frequented or when their nesting cycle was, or any of that. But what I can tell you is that those moments embodied peace, connection, and slowing down. That's why I have a bird feeder at my house now as an adult. When the rat race seems all-consuming, and when I feel in over my head, when I need somewhere quiet and some peace at the end of a particularly long day, Boo Boo taught me to sit down and watch a bird feeder. So I do. Bird feeding properly done is an intentionally slow, technology-free ritual that disconnects you from algorithms and expectations. It resists hustle and bustle, and it doesn't worry about trends. Instead, it carves out a space, a time, and an occasion to go back to our roots, our foundation. We humans spend our hard-earned money feeding birds who are perfectly capable of feeding themselves because we are nourished through reconnecting with the love we've given and the love we've received from those people who mean the most to us. Now, yes, Mr. CANary is technically a bird feeding company because we make bird feeders. But don't think for a minute that we're in the bird business. No, we are in the keeping humans grounded in what matters business. That's why you own and keep a bird feeder. Or that's why you should start. All right, audience, time for a class participation activity. First, if you're blessed enough to still have that person who introduced you to bird feeding around, send them the link to this podcast episode, along with a brief thank you note to them for helping you discover this relationship ritual that is backyard bird feeding. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the CANary Cast, and remember, buy a feeder, create a job. See you next time.